Ευχαριστώ πολύ για την πρόσκληση. Στα αγγλικά είπαμε, έτσι. I have a number of slides that are a little busy, but the aim of the slides is to demonstrate that surgical training in the US is very regimented. And there's a lot of specific requirements, which I think they're lacking from the Greek educational system. So I'm showing some of those here. These are from the American Board of Surgery, and specifically for general surgery, which is my specialty. I subspecialize in bariatric surgery. But essentially, it's a 5-year program, but there's a number of stipulations, as shown here, of how that needs to be divided. There need to be consecutive months. You have to do it specific times. You can take some time off for research, but generally, it's fairly regimented. There's also some requirements. You may be familiar with those. You're supposed to complete some certifications. For example, the Advanced Cardiovascular Life Support certification, or the Trauma Life Support, the ATLS, and more recently, the Fundamentals of Laparoscopic Surgery have been added, FLS, as well as Fundamentals of Endoscopic Surgery, which is the last two certifications programs have been developed by SAGES in collaboration with the American College of Surgeons, and SAGES is a minimally invasive organization that I'm a board member of. So the requirements also include specific observations and operative videos that has been added more recently that the program is supposed to make of the resident. They have other specifics, and I want to pay a little more attention to the operative experience. We heard in a previous session here that I think some of the new requirements here are multiples of 250 operations that have to be accomplished, and that may be not feasible. In the US, a training program that cannot provide the 850 operative procedures to a surgeon cannot exist. So they have to demonstrate that they can provide this experience to the trainees, otherwise they won't get the opportunity to operate or exist. So that's important to understand. There are some critical care cases that are required, as well as teaching assistants. So the resident is supposed to teach a more junior resident. And they've also implemented more recently that by the beginning of the third year of residency, the trainees have to complete at least 250. And one of the reasons for that was because a lot of programs were not giving a lot of experience in the early years. They were doing more what is called scat work, taking care of the paperwork, and they wanted to make sure that the experience is ongoing. And it's important to also note that as a chief resident, when you finish that year only, you have to do at least 200 cases. And these are not minor cases. These are what the cases are broken in categories as major or minor. These are major operations that they're supposed to do as surgeon, not as an assistant, but as a surgeon. So the requirements vary a lot. We recently did a study examining the education system in surgery, the US, United Kingdom, Japan, and Mexico. You can see that it's a little all over the place, and different countries have different requirements. I'll leave this up for a moment while I reflect on some of the previous presentations and my personal experience. So getting into a residency in the United States, especially a competitive residency, such as most surgical residencies, is not easy, neither guaranteed when you're an international graduate. You do need a lot of preparation and a good dose of luck. So what I'm trying to say is that, and it's not just doing an observership, it's multiple things you need to do. It's to be good at grades, but keep in mind that the USMLE, the scores, which a lot of international graduates used to use, because many can score high, they can take the time to study and score high. They used to use those grades as their entry point, but these are going away. They're not going to be considered moving forward. USMLE 1 is just a pass-fail, and USMLE 2 is supposed to follow in a few years. So that may make it harder to distinguish yourself as an international graduate. And that's important for you to understand if that's of interest to you. So, but the opportunity of the research experience is not just the fact that you're going to put some papers out. That is important. per se, but it's also because it gives you the opportunity to work with others. People get to know you, and that's the most valuable. It's not just the observership letter you'll get, but you get to meet people, you get to meet the training program people, the residents, because as part of the process is also an interview in the end that you're going to have to go and do and in a training program. And in the end, the whole group meets together and they look at the applicants. This is how it's done in our institution. And they look at everybody where they are, the scores, their pluses and minuses. And they say, okay, we like this guy. We didn't like this lady. We like that lady. So it's a process that is fairly comprehensive. There's not much randomness there, but it does require that you hit all these aspects. So we had a trainee from this university. I'm also a graduate of Aristotle, and he did a 2 years research experience with us, and he ended up matching in our program. But one of the main reasons was because he was very productive in his research years because everybody liked him. He interacted with multiple people in the program. And when it came to this discussion, I personally, who I was his mentor, didn't have to say a word. Everybody else was saying, oh, how good the guy is, and they wanted him in the program. So it's important to understand, it's very hard to do this if you're outside of the system. Because when you submit your application to an American program that's competitive, again, I'm mainly referring to surgical specialties, many programs don't even look at international graduates. Why? Because if you have 5 to 10 positions to fill and you get 500 to 600 applications from US graduates, you have plenty of great people there to look at. And the international graduates are a black box. You need to understand this. People don't know what to expect from you. You may be great, you may be terrible. So, and that's the issue which makes it hard. It's not that they don't like you, it's just they don't know how to assess you. And that's why it's important to get in the system so people get to better understand who you are and how you work and how good you are for them to even be able to accept you. I can give you a personal story, which is a funny story. When I was interviewing to get into residency, one of the questions I was asking in my interview, back then, there were no hour restrictions. We used to work 120 hours a week. I used to ask the question, how do you work that many hours? That's a no asking question, but nevertheless, I did not know better. Anyway, so I want to finish saying that I'm the president of the Association for Surgical Education this year. So it would be a great pleasure to host you if you can make it to San Diego in April. We'll have a Greek night because I'm the president this year, and we're going to have some Greek dancing. And if you have an interest in surgical education, I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Global Surgical Education. It's a new journal that belongs to this association that will be happy to get your articles. Thank you.